you, Sean. So the first thing we asked is that if you have your cell phones turned on, that you either put them on silent or turn them off. That is, unless your ringtone is Grateful Dead, then it's okay. So we want to thank you all for being here to honor and celebrate the life of Dan Boyle. During the service, the emotions may run the gamut. You may feel some sadness, which is normal. You may want to reach for a Kleenex, again, normal. But we also want to make sure you know it's okay to laugh. Dan brought a lot of joy to a lot of people's lives. I know for David and I, we share a lot of great memories with Dan. How many electricians are in the room? So I picked a hell of a time to tell this story. So David, Dan, and I all moved in to Petaluma in the fall of 1984. I moved from Marin with my wife, with yet to have children. Dan moved from San Mateo with Jenny and his 3 children. And David and Doreen and his 3 girls moved from Dodger. Way to get the crowd on your side.
Should be at least one of you out there. Come on.
Absolutely not.
I like it, Craig. So the one thing that we shared in common was that we moved into a brand new subdivision, and that means that we could have bitching sessions about the developer, what they would or wouldn't do, and it created a natural bond. And we got to know each other pretty quickly, found out about what we each did for a living. And so I living in Marin, I only lived like 22 miles away, so I got to come up a lot and watch my house being built. And it was my first house. It was very exciting. The one thing I noticed was that there was only one electrical outlet in the garage. And I had a lot of power tools. So knowing that I needed more than that, I talked to the electrical subcontractor, and I said, can you put more outlets in the garage? And he said, no, that's not on the plans. But I'll tell you what I will do is I'll run you a dedicated circuit, put it in the attic, I'll cap it, and after you take possession of the house, you can then run it yourself or hire somebody to do it. I said, great. So after we took possession of the house, I found the wire, and I remembered, Dan's an electrician. So I went over and knocked on Dan's door, and said, hey Dan, I got a question for you. Can I bother you? And he said, and of course, typical Dan, absolutely. I said, I've got a wire, and I need to find out whether it has power to it or not. And I said, is it like a 9-volt battery? Do you take the 2 wires and put it through your tongue? Yeah. See, your all responses is what most people would do. That wasn't Dan's response. Dan's response shows you the grace that this man had. Dan smiled, and he said, well, Don, that is one way to find out if it's hot. But he said, you know what, I've got a better idea. I've got a tool that can test it. I said, I don't want to bother you. And this is Dan. It didn't matter what you were interrupting him in. He would put down whatever he had, and he would help you. So we ran over to my house, got on the ladder. He went up there, tested it. Sure enough, it was hot. And from there, Dan taught me a lot of the intricacies of electrical work. You know, I've now done a lot of my own electrical in the house I live in now. I replaced all the outlets. He taught me the finer things of owning Klein tools and so forth. And I remember asking Dan after he got off the ladder, so what would have happened had I put the 2 wires to my tongue? And Dan said, well, you probably wouldn't be able to taste for 6 months, and you probably would have landed on your ass on the garage floor. Thus, the education of Dan Boyle teaching Don White the finer things of electrical. So at this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to David, who's got a very special song.
All the years combined, they melt into a dream. A broken angel sings from a guitar. And when you hear that song come crying like the wind, it seems like all this life was just a dream. All the years combined, they melt into a dream. song comes flying through the night, for all the broken dreams and vanished years. Stella Blue, Stella Blue. When all the cards are down, there's nothing left to see. There's just the pavement left and broken dreams. And in the end there's still that song comes crying like the wind down every lonely street that's ever been. Stella Blue, Stella Blue. Well, I stayed in every blue-light cheap hotel. Can't never try again. Dust off those rusty screens just one more time. Gonna make them shine. It all rolls into one. Nothing comes for free. There's nothing you can hold for very long. And when you hear that song come crying like the wind, it seems like all this life was just a dream. Stella Blue, Stella Blue, Stella Blue. So the first time I heard that song, no, please. This is a memorial. Well, I guess we're supposed to be. You can clap? Okay. Thank you. I'm used to playing in church, and you're not supposed to be able to clap in church. So the first time I heard that song, of course, was at Dan's house, and it just blew me away. It became immediately my favorite song, and it still is my favorite Grateful Dead song. And so Dan knew that, he got that, and so he did what Dan has done for me many times during my life. A few days later, he gave me this CD, which is called Wake of the Flood. It's the first recording of Stella Blue. And it was the first of many CDs to come from Dan. Back at you.
So this is the time we're going to do some remembrances, and we're going to start off with Kelly, Kevin, and Craig. And I think, Kevin, you're up first.
This one or this one? All right, this is not going to be easy. My name is Kevin. I am the middle child of my dad's 3 children. Which makes me the best. Sorry, Kelly, but Craig, you should already know this. I want to thank everybody for coming here today and to celebrate my dad. It's clear that he has made a big impact on a lot of people's lives. Losing my father is the most difficult thing I've ever had to go through. Standing up here today, I realize how fortunate I was to have him as my father and my mentor. There are no words to express his influence in my life. It is through his example that I learned how to be a father and the husband that I am today. He loved his entire family dearly. It's an odd thing speaking to you all about the man that has served as the narrator of my life. My dad devoted a great deal of time and energy and care into my successful upbringing. He was a great dad and a great provider for our family. The biggest lesson I ever learned from my dad was the value of hard work and work ethic. My dad was a well-respected union electrician, as a lot of you are in here. He woke up every day and put on his boots and went to work for our family. He never, and I mean never, called in sick for work. He never, and I mean never, called in sick for work. Okay, I just said that. He truly believed that if you worked hard and treated people right and took care of your family, that you would lead a good life. I admire this about my dad. Both my brother and I followed in my father and my grandfather's footsteps, becoming Local 6 wiremen in San Francisco. I know how proud my dad was of us both. My dad loved when I would call him and ask him questions about my job. He took great pride in guiding me through and answering my work questions. I miss this bond, and I will greatly. No one has ever said anything bad about my dad in the workplace, and that's saying a lot in our line of work. To me, my dad's finest quality was his patience. He had the inherent ability to listen, to absorb, and to offer his point of view in any situation. He simply taught me how to be a good person. My dad loved all of us kids, and he really loved his grandkids. One of my favorite memories of my dad was our recent trip with Patty to Kauai in the summer of 2016, just last year. To see my dad in his happy place and watch him interact with my daughter Maya was priceless, and I will cherish that trip as long as I live. My dad has 6 granddaughters. 6. That he loves so very much. He was, however, asking Jen, my wife, and I, when we were going to give him a grandson. I take great comfort in knowing that my dad knew he was just about to have a grandson. Timing was unfortunate, as he passed away 2 weeks before my son Dylan was born. He was right over there. I know my dad is looking down and he's very proud. As we gather here today to remember and celebrate his life, because I know my dad wouldn't want us to be crying, which I am because I'm emotional, but my dad would like this to be a party, which we should do, which I will do after this speech. As we gather here today to celebrate his life, it's his gentle soul that will stay with us all. A soul that brought joyful fulfillment to many, but a legacy that will live on forever. I love you, Dad.
That's hard to follow. I'd like to thank everyone for being here to celebrate my dad. I knew he had touched the lives of many, and this turnout definitely proves that. I'm Craig. I'm the oldest of his 3 children, and better. I'm also representing 2 of his grandchildren, Sienna and Taylor. The reality of losing my dad has been the toughest thing that I've ever had to go through. Nothing can truly prepare you for it, so please bear with me as I try to get through this. My dad was my mentor. And to be honest, my best friend. He's a man with multiple talents. He was an excellent electrician and a tradesman. He ran many multi-million-dollar projects, and they respected anyone lucky enough to work with him. He chose to follow his father, George Boyle's footsteps as a local 6 wireman. My brother Kevin and I did just the same. I know my grandfather was very proud of him. And I hope my father was equally as proud as me. Shit. All right. I find comfort knowing that they're together again. Looking back down on our family full of pride. Another thing my dad got from his parents was the gift of being a great host and an amazing chef. He'd entertain and treat everyone around him as if they were royalty. The family events and holidays will never quite be the same without him. These times will forever be bittersweet, but hopefully easier as times go on. When I look back at my childhood, a few things come to mind. One being great music. It was a serious thing to him. He very much cared about the quality of sound and it being loud. And if you lived on our block or anywhere near my house, you definitely knew that. He would have listening parties on the weekends with Don and Dave, and I'd always try to join or tag along and join them. Being exposed to bands like the Grateful Dead, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimi Hendrix, etc., at such a young age really had a profound impact and effect on my life. He took my brother, sister, and I to see the Dead when I was 13 years old. And that experience changed my life forever. In a good way. They brought a common thread between us that was bigger than father and son. It blossomed into a friendship that was second to none. The most important gift my dad gave me was showing me what it takes to be a good father. He had unbelievable patience. He listened. He allowed me to learn from my own mistakes and made me suffer the consequences for my own actions, which is a lot. It's true. But he never gave me bad advice. He was always just there to have an ear and to help me through my adversity. He always had my back and guided me down the right path. I hope to do just as he did with my own children. I hope and pray he's looking down on me right now. And is as proud of me as I am of being his son. Dad, I love you. Thank you very much for all you being here. It really means a lot to me.
At this time, I'd like to have Patty, Chris, Carrie, Nicole, and Emma come on up.
I am Patty, I'm Dan's wife, and I first of all want to thank all of you for coming and celebrating this most beautiful life ever. Can you hear me now? I just wanted to thank everybody for coming and celebrating Dan's life. One of the most beautiful people I've ever met in my life. I was just going to tell you that Nicole's going to speak for me because I'm not really up to it, but I wanted to add a couple things to Craig and Kevin about your dad. And when you said how much he loved to hear your stories, a couple of the biggest highlights is we'd be sitting at home and one of you would call and you had a question about your job. He just got those cute dimples, and it gave him such joy giving you advice. And the last year that he's been so sick, especially the last 3 months, and he couldn't talk, but when you boys came to see him, all he wanted to do is hear your stories. What job you're on, what you're working on, and that just gave him so much pride, knowing that you guys were following in his footsteps and his dad's. And anyway, I'll miss him forever. He's the love of my life. He gave me so much joy these last 17 years. And again, thank you so much, everybody, for coming and celebrating Dan.
My name is Nicole, and I have the honor of being Dan's stepdaughter. In our family, we have a nickname for Dan, and it's Camper Dan. And it's not because he's some MacGyver or Boy Scout camper. It's because Dan Boyle married my mother, who loves to camp. From the red dusty camping trip to Lake Trinity, to renting a mini RV for a fishing camping trip in Washington, where there may have been an incident of Dan backing into Chris's neighbor's fence post with the RV. Dan camped for my mom. The last camping trip involved helping to chaperone 10, 12-year-old girls and boys for Jocelyn's birthday camping trip. Dan camped. In reflection, I feel that these memories really capture the spirit of Dan. A sense of adventure coupled with his willingness to do anything for the ones that he loved. He would take interest in what you love to do because he loves you and it's important to you. That's how I remember Dan, the one who always was ready for an adventure and took interest in what you do. Our families actually met years ago, before there ever was a Dan and Patty. Our families have hung out since we were kids. The Boyles were next door neighbors to the Coes. When there was nothing but empty fields across from their houses, I threw a big rock into the air and hit Craig Boyle in the back, and Judy White made me apologize. Craig then asked me out. Our families then houseboated together on Lake Powell, where my brother Kerry water skied with Kelly standing on his skis, holding her up in his arms. They were extended family. It wasn't until the Co-girls had their milestone birthday party in Petaluma, turning 16, 18, and 21, about 20 years ago, but please don't do the math, the Co-girls will kill me. I said close to 20 years. We all have different recollection of how the events played out, but because I'm standing here, I'll tell my side of the story. Dan was recently divorced. My mom was recently divorced. Dan was tending bar, happened to be a dry bar, but my mom loves a bar. And I remember my brother Kerry and I took notice of the newly single Dan and schemed a plot for him to come join us at the after party at McNear's. He said he was on board, but that Dan wasn't ready that night and he didn't show. It wasn't until a year later at the Coe's house at their 25th wedding anniversary where Dan and Patty met again, and yet for the very first time. Dan showed up in black jeans and cowboy boots and looked devilishly handsome. There were instant sparks. At one point, Dan took my mom for a ride in a sports car. About an hour later, I found them making out like two school kids in front of the garage of my grandparents' house. Apparently, Grandpa heard a commotion out front, so he came out and turned the lights on, catching them in a full-on lip lock. Dan was mortified. The rest is history. They were inseparable that night, and they have been inseparable ever since. Dan treated my mom like the most precious gift in his life. He lit up when she walked into the room. For 17 years, without fail, he put her first. I'm eternally grateful to Dan for loving my mom like she deserves, unconditionally, relentlessly, and with his whole heart. They were best friends. Some of my mother's greatest memories involve the two of them on an adventure together. They loved to travel and explore new places together. They went to Mexico, Washington, D.C., Tahoe, and Dan's happy place, Kauai, where ultimately his ashes will be scattered. One of their last trips was among their favorites, a road trip with Toby to Washington, where they got to visit us in Washington, Chris's family, our family. We went to a Mariners game. We camped. Dan brewed beer with Sean. They went boating with Chris's family. And then they road tripped home with Emma and Jocelyn and stopped in Bend, Oregon and Crater Lake on the way. All new experiences for Dan. From the very beginning, Dan made it clear we were also his children. He showed us unconditional love. He took pride in our successes. He showed compassion with our heartache. And he embraced us as only a father can. I can't see you, my eyes are bright. Our extended family is a gift. As much as he loved being a father and a husband, I believe his greatest role and honor in life is being a grandfather. Sienna, Taylor, Maya, Emma, Jocelyn, and Amber lit up his heart. And everyone just knew how excited he was in anticipation of his very first grandson, Dylan. He lives on through each of them. When Dan was about to go in, for his procedure at Stanford, I came down to help out for the week to be with him and help my mom during that time. Right before flying down, Dan sent me a text. He wanted to tell me how much it meant to him that I was coming down to take care of my mom, because it was breaking his heart that he couldn't. In his eyes, that was his job to take care of his wife. As scared and in pain as he was during that time, he was still thinking of my mom first. That is how I'll remember Dan, that even in times where they're most difficult, to care for others first. I can't reconcile in my heart how this man was taken from this world too soon and in too much pain. But as I reflect on the last year and a half of his life, this I know, that if the power of love and prayers and compassion of others could truly heal what ails a person, we would have healed Dan. Because the love, the strength, the sheer will to heal was so powerful towards Dan, my mom, and his kids, that I know it would have been enough to heal the sickest of people. So our greatest gift to Dan would be to take that love and strength and plant it in this world. Be grateful for each day that we are given. In time, I know our deep sadness will pass and make room for memories to shine on. These are the memories I know will soon again fill my heart. Every time we camp, every time we eat a ribeye, every time. Every time Sean brews, every time I drink Crown Royal, every time we go to a Mariners game, every time I hear Grateful Dead, every time we watch a show Sunday morning, every time we have to trim the tree in the backyard that Dan somehow accidentally knocked down while playing catch with Toby. Every holiday when I'm craving green bean soup and Remus Fizzes. Every time someone laughs so hard that they snort. Every time someone tries to make my mom a macarita as good as Dan's. Every time I hear my nieces utter the sweet words, Papa Dan. Every time my mother gets caught in his memory, whether it makes her laugh or cry. Every time I look into the faces of Craig, Kevin, and Kelly and can't help but see his face. Dan will always be close in memory. He is deeply woven into the tapestry of our lives. So I know that during this time of sadness, he will hold us together. He will help us find strength to give. He will bring us back to joy. He'll remind us each day that life is a gift and to make the most of it. Camper Dan, I will forever hold you in my heart. I bid you good night.
Who's in charge of this musical equipment? Okay. So in a few minutes, after I'm done, we're going to open up the floor to share a story. So maybe somebody whoever is out there thinking about that, think about what story you might tell. We'll have a cordless mic. Could be Emma's going to run it around. Just raise your hand. Kevin, it's nice to know that Dylan's career path has already been set out for him. I'm just sticking with the men on this one, okay? Put the feminism away for right now. I know. And David, Dan, and I shared so many incredible memories. And I could literally talk for hours, as my wife would tell you. But I'm not going to. I'm going to speak about one specific area, and Craig touched upon it. It's the music area. So we all have people who come in and out of our lives and affect us in different ways. Some are like a windblown leaf that comes in, touches you, and they're gone and didn't really impact you. Others hit you like a ton of bricks. Dan hit me like a ton of bricks. And it was specifically for me, the music. So I grew up in the 70s. And I would go to concerts, and I would, go to Chicago, the Doobie Brothers, the Eagles, Peter Frampton, Bruce Springsteen, yada, yada, yada. But it was either going on a date, or I was with my buddies. It was not anything really impactful to me. And then I moved to Garfield and found out I really didn't understand about music. And David and Dan both changed my life musically. It was through them that I came to understand that music was much more than just notes and hearing. You walked into Dan's house, you walk up the steps, open the door, there's a little landing, you walk up another set of steps, and immediately to the left was his living room. In the early days, what was in the living room?
It was to the right.
Or to the right. Okay. My other left. That's right, there was a wall to the left. Well, I was drinking at the time. Anyway, to the right, and in that room was a pair of Fisher speakers and his music system, and nothing else. And we spent many a listening session sitting on the floor, listening to songs that weren't played on KRQR. They weren't a 3 to 5 minute song. Dan would put on the Allman Brothers, and it might be in memory of Elizabeth Reed or Whipping Post. Or then he'd put on Eric Clapton, and it was Have You Ever Loved a Woman? And through that, Dan was teaching me that music is much more than just listening. It's here. On a memorable night in the summer, I believe, of 1986, an epiphany happened. As David spoke earlier, Dan loved the Grateful Dead. I hated the Grateful Dead. Matter of fact, I went to a day on the Green where the Who and the Grateful Dead were touring, and they were flip-flopping who would open and who would close, and it just happened that the Who opened up, enjoyed them, and we walked out, my buddies and I walked out on the Grateful Dead. Huge mistake. But Dan really tried to get us to like the Grateful Dead. So one night, I knocked on the door. Hey, you got a minute? I got something I'd like you to hear. A line that we heard many times from Dan. I said, sure, but my wife isn't feeling well. We're going to have to listen to the garage. He said, no problem. And he put on an album of the Grateful Dead. David soon heard it, knocked on the door. He joined us, and that night changed our lives forever when it came to the Grateful Dead. It was an epiphany, it was the first time I ever experienced an epiphany. From there, Dan had basically given us the keys to the realm of the Grateful Dead. But it wasn't just the Grateful Dead. Dan got us to go to, he had a friend growing up named Jim Kerwin who belonged to a band called the David Grisman Quintet. And he got us to go down to the Jewish Community Center. And we would go every year in June, and you got to pack a picnic basket. You could bring in your own alcohol. You could put out your lawn seats and your blankets. And it was just sort of a gathering. But what I soon found out was this musical band of a mandolin player, an acoustic guitarist, a flutist, a percussionist, and a stand-up bass transformed the night into this most beautiful music. April's Wedding Song, Arabia. And it was something that told me, wow, there is a lot more to music. And this was Dan. This was Dan sharing this with me. And he was telling me, you've got to get away from FM radio and all the pop stuff. There's much greater music out there. And for me, that led to a lot of other bands. And I'm just going to say this. This is to me is Dan's musical tree for me. This is my list. And I just wrote this off the top of my head a little while ago. So this is Dan's musical tree for me. Grateful Dead, Grisman Quintet, Moe, Highway Poets, Widespread Panic, Government Mule, California Honeydrops, Humphreys McGee, Poor Man's Whiskey, Samantha Fish, Birds of Chicago, The Revivalists, Elephant Revival, Trout Stick Revival, Yonder Mountain, Billy Strings, Fruition, The Brothers Comatose, AOO, Railroad Earth, Leftover Salmon, Scott Pemberton, Steve Poltz, The Infamous String Dusters, Dead Winter Carpenters. These are bands that I bet you a lot of you don't know about, but Dan showed me how to feel the music and to experience it. And I don't really go to concerts anymore. I go to shows. I go to music festivals, High Sierra Music Festival, what once was American River Music Festival, Winter Wintergrass, Hangtown. And now I would much rather see the Dirty Red Barn play and be right up front than to see U2 in an arena. It's not even close. You can pay me later. So, in closing, what Dan did was he affected my life that will be something I will take the rest of my life. And it's my wife who played classical violin, and we used to go to the Marin Symphony. And now, not her playing, don't get me wrong. Yeah, but it's still. But now she joins me on the music, and my children have joined me. It's paying it forward from Dan. And now whenever I get a chance, Carrie and I have shared music. When you get a chance to share these people are cutting their teeth. It's something that's just, I don't know if I can explain it well enough what it has meant to me. And that's, I really think, David's had a pretty good hand in this, but I really give that credit to Dan. So for me, I have this image. Dan, right now, is sitting on the most beautiful floor in heaven. His Fisher speakers are out in front of him. And he's gathered around Jimmy, Stevie, Greg, Jerry, Pigpen, and telling them, hey guys, you got a minute? I got something I'd like to play for you. We don't, oh, here it is. So, Emma? So, say that again. Okay. No, that's true. The 901s. To allow as many people as possible, I was supposed to bring my air horn at 2-minute one, which I would have had to cut off for me. Just raise your hand if you've got a little story, a little yarn you want to tell. Don't be bashful. I see one hand way in the back. Everybody, you better run fast. Oh. Right here, Jen.
I'll make it short because I do it. Okay. I'm Jenny Boyle. We have a whole group of people here to my left that a lot of them knew Dan because they're his cousins. And of course his sister, Janice, I met in high school. Mercy High School, Burlingame. She was a sophomore, I was a freshman. I didn't plan any of this, so I just got to say something because it relates to the music. Just a funny story that I think I was telling Paula Lavoie. I was telling somebody earlier today, just the things, there's so much that I could tell you because Dan and I met when I was 15 years old at a high school dance in Burlingame with my best friend Jeanette and his best friend, or one, I think it was Jim Kerwin. And we go to this dance and my future first boyfriend was playing in a band called I.W. Harper. I know Paula remembered all this stuff. And probably Janice too, and that was Dennis Young, and he was a musician. Anyway, Dan didn't ask me to dance, he asked Jeanette to dance. And Jim Kerwin asked me to dance, so we did. And then, anyway, make a long story short, those are great days. And I was a freshman in high school and he was a senior. And I just want to touch a little bit. I know a lot of electrical workers. I've known some of you because Dad got into the trade, the apprenticeship program, which was 4 years then. You know, he's had many past lives, as we all do. As we get older, I have his youth, and I have part one. Patty shared part two with Dan. And in those days, so Dan's going out with Jeanette, sets me up, and this is where we get into the music. I'm trying to tell the story so it makes sense. We get into the music. So Dan and Jeanette are going out and decide to set me up with one of Dan's best friends. One of them was Vic Lavoie. Sarah High School, they went back into kindergarten, I think, Dan and Vic. And another guy who happened to be the guitarist in the band. And Dan had one thing. Never skipped on quality sound. Music was very important in his life, even as a young man. And he picked up Jeanette, and I was with Jeanette to meet my blind date. Vic and Paula in the back of Dan's, God, I don't know, maybe Craig knows the year of that vaudeville Pontiac Bonneville, and it went as the Blue Long. Dan had the hugest car. Well, Dan, I don't want to make this too long, but Dan had the biggest car of anybody I knew and the best sound system in my car. And 8-track tapes. And yeah, it was telling Paula. So I don't know where you are, Paula, but so good to see you again. It's been a long time. So we pull over after a dance or something we had gone to a dance. I don't know what we did, but we pulled over to make out. And while we were, 3 couples in this big old car, and we got Hendrix blaring crystal clear, even in those days, and that was 1970. So, on with that, but one other area, I know there's a lot of electricians here, but Dan had another brilliant talent in those days, and it was cooking. Dan was unbelievable. He just had so many talents, but in those days he worked at Green Hills Country Club. And I'll tell you something about Dan that probably no one knew, but one of the cool things is Dan was a long hair. Dan was a hipster. Dan was cool. I just thought he was, well, bottom line, him and Jeanette broke up, and then me and Dennis, after that whole night, we got together. And we stayed together for a total of 27 years. We were married for 22 years, and I thank him for the 3 beautiful children that he gave to me. I kind of want to say that to the end, I'll let this microphone go, but Dan, at the very beginning, he was a long hair, but he was also working in a country club. But he wore a chef hat. Every day to go to work, Dan had to tuck his hair up and put a wig on. He did that every day. And he was an exemplary employee for them, as he was in everything he did. So, thank you for letting me say whatever. I don't know how it all came out, but I hold him deep in my heart, and I always will.
Okay, so who else would like to share a short yarn? In the back. Okay.
Hey, my name's Rudy Martell. Dan worked for me back in 1981. He just came on my job as an apprentice. And as you remember, 1981 was a good year for the 49ers. Thank God. And they had just acquired Hacksaw Reynolds. So one day I'm going walking around the job there, and I said, Dan, hey Dan, you look like Hacksaw Reynolds. He pulls off his glasses and he says, how's that? I said, yeah, you're the Hacksaw Reynolds. Every time I saw him, I'd call him Hacksaw Reynolds. It was just uncanny the way he looked. And one week we were working overtime. This is a true story. We went down to Victoria Station down there on Broadway, and I think it was Battery at the time. It was under the freeway. We were working a Saturday and took all the guys out to lunch. We go down there, and we're going through the salad bar. This is a true story, brother. And Dan nudged me. He says, Rudy. I go, what? He says, look down at the sunflower seeds. So I take a look. I said, well, I don't see nothing. He goes, there's a mouse in there. I look down, and sure enough, there was a mouse in the sunflower seed. So guess what me and Dan did? We put our salads back. Everybody else ate the salads. But hey, what the heck, huh?
I have to write it down because I get nervous and then I forget what I'm supposed to say, or what I want to say. So, Dan Boyle. Keep it right in front. Dan? I even heard that. Dan Boyle, he came into Patty's life and swept her right off her feet. They were like giddy teenagers. Anybody else get that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. How many makeout sessions did we have to endure? No. Let's admit that Dan was a bit handsy, right? And I literally think that they were my age when they were doing that. Whew. Okay. I just had to get that out there right away. They're all thinking it.
Nowadays, not so good.
Dan had so much love for Patty. I remember having a problem with the mic thing. So Dan had so much love for Patty. His blue eyes twinkled, and he could not get that smile off his face when he was talking about her or when he was with her. I love that he spoiled her. Trips, jewelry, purses, champagne in bed, and pretty much kept Brighton up there on the list for years. Even when Dan was unable to go out and get gifts for Patty when he got ill, he didn't hesitate. He would text and say, I need to do something for my girl, and can you please pick something up for her, because I'm not letting this anniversary, birthday, Valentine's Day go by without having something to give her. And I love that he did that. I love that he did that. He was very generous. Dan had a huge heart, but mostly Dan was very hospitable. You would go to his house, he would feed you, talk to you, and one hand was constantly filling your wine glass. So I just want to say thank you, Dan, wherever you are, for loving our friend. Thank you.
They're back there. Emma, right back there.
My name is Jim Thorson. I'm an electrician as well as Dan's been. We have a lot in common over the years. My father was an electrician. Both my sons are wiremen. And when I met him back in the early 80s, we also had more in common. We both grew up in San Bruno, and we both went to St. Robert's Grammar School. And upon seeing Dan's obituary, I sent it out to some friends that I'm still close with from the class of 1970. And they obviously had older brothers, so I sent it out, and I wanted to know if anybody knew the Boyles from San Bruno. So I got a couple of responses back. One was from my friend Paul Niehauser, who said, Dan was a great guy. I worked with him at Green Hills in the California Club. He always made sure the dishwashers were well supplied and good food and beer. And then another friend of mine responded, Bill Giesti, whose brother George knew Dan, and sure do remember him. He went to Sarah, and during my junior year, he and Felios drove me to school in the mornings after Pat Moran had moved on. He drove an old Buick sedan. I know you said it was a Pontiac. I tend to believe the guy, but as far as he installed stereo speakers in the back seat. He loved the new Led Zeppelin album that came out in December 1969, Led Zeppelin 2, and played it every morning on the way to Sarah. I loved it too, so I didn't mind. Even now, when I listen to the Ramble On song and hear the stereo separation of the guitars going back and forth, it reminds me of driving with Dan. So, just some words from the old days. Loving family, great friends, along with local Six Brothers here today. Thank you so much.
Is there anybody else who wants to share a story? Up over here, Emma.
My name's Rhonda. I knew Dan because I'm Patty's cousin. And I have to say, Dan's hospitality is probably second to none. Her parents were the best hosts I ever knew before that. But the thing I will remember Dan about the most is the twinkle in his eye when he talked about his wife, his children, his grandchildren, and his dog. We have a lot in common. I'm a super dog person, and we could talk for hours about our dogs. Yeah, we did. And we talked about Stevie Ray Vaughan quite a lot over the years. But for me, when I think about Dan, I'm sorry he's gone, but the twinkle in his eye and the smile is exactly what I think about every time I picture Dan in my head, is that twinkle and that smile. And when Dan talked to you, no matter who you were, when he was talking to you and with you, you were the most important person. No one else existed. He was so interested in you, what you were talking about and what you were saying, and it didn't matter what the subject was. You were the only focus, and he made you feel so special and so loved, and every word coming out of your mouth he was hung on it, and he was interested. And what a fabulous legacy. I mean, I hope I could be this much of that someday, but great man, great memories.
So maybe one or two more, and then we're going to get to the next part of our service. Todd? No, I know. But I thought Todd raised his hand.
I have the pleasure of being, or Nicole is my best friend, and I'm her best friend, I'm pretty sure. We've known each other since we were 15, and my husband Doug happened to have been, and still is, best friends with Chris and Carrie. I'm younger, so I never met Doug because we crossed paths over the years, I think, but I was lucky enough to first meet Dan when they started dating, and I was Patty's roommate. So I have stories that are not appropriate, but I've shared them recently, and I'll keep it at that. But anyways, I'm here to say that my husband and I wouldn't be a family without Dan and Patty, because we met at their wedding, and we've been married for 11 years, and we have 2 boys. So I love you, and we loved him, and thank you for sharing him with us.
Is there anybody else? 1, 2 more?
There's no mouse. It's just a little bit. I love you is a phrase that is very common, and people say to each other often, just, when you're leaving, saying goodbye, I love you. But something that I will always remember is the way Dan said I love you. He would just look at me sideways, pull his head back a little bit, got that glint in his eyes, and it was, I love you. And it always made me feel so special.
So,
I'm just a guitar player.
Dan's wife, Patty, has wanted me to point out that it's her brother up here who is playing the guitar and put the musical program together. Now, David would have told you all this a little bit later, but we'll do it now. So we're going to get to the music. I just want to share one little thing. Dan and I, over the years, had a lot of really private conversations, some that I doubt were ever shared with anybody else. through some of his most difficult times, when he lost his parents, when he went through divorce, when I had a difficult issue. You know, he was a parent of 3, and I had issues about being a parent, and Dan, I could confide in Dan. And I also had a couple of private conversations about you. And I just want to say, Patty, Dan didn't just love you, Dan loved loving you. And there's a difference between that. And I'm telling you, I know you think he was a gift to you, and I know he was. But you were a gift to him. And it definitely was something very special. So I just want to add that on to you. And now, you can't leave the stage.
Well, stop making things that make me emotional.
Okay, there was this time that Dan farted right in the middle of the Bohemian Rhapsody, and it was just not the right time. David, all yours.
So now that you know who I am, this is my daughter Erin, and this is my daughter Stephanie, and this is my son-in-law Sean. We're going to do a little trilogy here. Whoop, you're right.
There is a road, no simple highway, between the dawn and dark of night.
And if you go, no one may follow. That path is for your steps alone.
If my words did glow with the gold of sunshine, and my tunes were played on the harp unstrung, would you hear my voice come through the music? Would you hold it near as it were your own? There is a road, no simple highway, between the dawn and dark of night. And if you go, no one may follow. That path is for your steps alone. Ripples into waters where there is no pebble tossed, no wind to blow. If you choose to lead, must follow. But if you fall alone. If you should stand, then who's to guide you? If I knew the way, I would take you home. La da da da.
Please sing with us. La da 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 da. La 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 free to sing with us. Going down the road, feeling bad. I'm going down the road, feeling bad. Going down the road, feeling bad. Yeah. Don't want to be treated this way. Don't want to be treated this way. Tell you how it's gonna be. You're gonna give your love to me. I wanna love you night and day. You're my love, my fade away. You're my love, my fade away. My love is bigger than a Cadillac. I try to show you, but you drive me back. Your love for me has got to be real. You're gonna know that's how I feel. Love is real and I fade away. Love is real and I fade away. I wanna tell you how it's gonna be. You're gonna give your love to me. I wanna love you night and day. Love is real and I'll fade away. Love is real and I'll fade away. Love is real and I'll fade away. Love is real and I 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 fade away. Come on, sing with us. Love is real and I fade away. Love is real and I fade away. Love is real and I fade away. Ba, 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 ba. Love is real and I fade away. Ba, 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 ba. Love is real and I fade away. Ba, 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 ba. Love is real and I fade away. Ba, 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 ba. So, the day after Dan passed, a bunch of us family went over to Patty's house, and it was really a good family day. And at the very end of the night, daughter Erin brought out a MP3 that she wanted to play, and we were sitting out in the backyard, and it was a recording of a couple of songs that we had a band back in the 80s called 3D. Dan was the drummer in that band.
For the record, I wasn't one of the Ds.
Right.
Although they gave me a harmonica.
We tried. Patty had never heard Dan play drums because she came after that, and she had no idea that Dan played drums. So she asked me if I could play an excerpt from those songs for here. For those of you that don't know how gifted Dan was, Jenny bought these drums for Dan about 1985. And within weeks, he was a really good drummer, and he joined the neighborhood band. So I'm going to take just a second here to set this up. Fill for me, Don.
So two nuns walked into a bar. Are you ready, David?
He'll not survive, he yelled. You never bury me alive. I'm not at home. My life's my own. Without pride, we're all alone. Just like that bird, I shook my fist. The devil fears me when I resist. I don't know if he's here, but those songs were written by neighbor Ron Levy, who's a great songwriter. So, okay. On to the religious part of the show.
It's time to meditate, as you wrote in. So, Dan wasn't an overly religious man, even though he was raised Catholic. But the way Dan lived his life, I know. Oh. Sorry.
You said this was going to be short. Did you lie?
I did. But the way Dan lived his life was, with his morals, his ethics, was Christ-like. And so I found a number of 3 Bible verses that I thought really spoke about the man who Dan was. And if you're so moved, close your eyes. This would be the meditation part. And just listen to these words out of the Bible and how they were so applicable to Dan. I'll start with Mark 9:35. Sitting down, Jesus called the 12 and said, anyone who wants to be first must be last, and the servant of all. 1 Peter 4:10. Each of you shall use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. And lastly, 1 Corinthians 10:24. No one should seek their own good, but the good of others. And this is Dan Boyle. Vicki spoke perfectly about this. Dan was the most incredible host. You did not enter into his house and your glass was ever empty. You did not, if you were hungry, you left full. And what David and I always made sure, if we had an event, we made sure that Dan was able to attend before we scheduled the event, because Dan would come into our house and he would take over being the host. And I mean that in the most complimentary way possible. It relieved me of being a host, and Dan did it. And he loved taking care. You know, if you went into a room and there was 5 chairs and 6 people, I guarantee you who would not be in one of the chairs. It would be Dan. So at this point, we're going to turn it over back to David.
So we're going to sing Amazing Grace, because this is a memorial, and that's what you do. You sing Amazing Grace. The words are on the back of the bulletin. I'm going to do one special verse by myself that is to Dan, but we'd like for you all to sing along. The thing that's going to be different about it, and Dan would approve of this, is we are going to be singing Amazing Grace to the tune of House of the Rising Sun. It was a few years ago when Brother Don discovered this version by the Blind Boys of Alabama. So if you know House of the Rising Sun, you'll be able to sing Amazing Grace too. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. You guys may as well stay up here because all we got is the prayer. Getting close to the end. So here's a prayer. And you can close your eyes and bow your head if you want, but if you don't, I'll understand. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the gift of Dan Robert Boyle. We miss him, we love him, we grieve. And today we celebrate his wonderful life and all that he meant to us. Dan embodied all that Jesus would have us be. Humble, joyful, kind, gentle, loving, a servant of all, always putting the needs of others first. And the bottom line, it was fun to be with Dan. Lord, thank you for the positive impact that Dan has had on my life. Dan made me a better person. My guess is that I can say that for most in this room. As a Christian, I am taught to believe that there is something more after this life. I also believe that there is a spiritual part to every person that somehow exists apart from the flesh. And I think that this is a universal belief that translates to most religions and belief systems. I like that. I like that most, if not all of us, are connected in this way. Father, you have said there are many rooms in your heavenly house. It is my hope and my belief that's true. It is also my hope and belief that one of those rooms has Dan's name on it. Lord, most of all, I want to thank you for bringing Dan into the life of my sister Patty. For 17 years, Dan brought joy, love, excitement, respect, and adoration to Patty. Patty's a special person, and she deserves even more. I pray that you will help all of us here to love her and to support her every way that you can. I also pray for all of those who Dan has left for now. His children, Craig, Kevin, Kelly, sister Janice, so many grandchildren, and so many extended family, friends, and colleagues. Dan has gone way too soon, and I don't pretend to understand how that can be. I confess that I'm confused and angry, so Lord, I pray for understanding. We all grieve with Patty on Dan's passing. My prayer is that you would wrap your loving arms around Patty and in fact all of us and let us know that Dan's okay and that all will be well. We pray all of these things in the name of Jesus and in the name of all great spiritual truths. Amen.
Amen.
So we're going to sing And I Bid You Good Night, except it's going to be We Bid You Good Night. And I encourage you all to sing along as you, the words to the chorus are also on the back of your bulletin. And son-in-law Sean is going to read those words for you right now.
Lay down, dear brother, lay down and take your rest. Won't you lay your head upon your Savior's breast? We love you, but Jesus loves you best. And we bid you good night. Good night. Good night. Lay down, dear brother, lay down and take your rest. Won't you lay your head upon your Savior's breast? We love you, but Jesus loves you best. And we bid you good night, good night, good night. And we bid you good night, good night, good night. Lay lay down and take your rest. Won't you lay your head upon your Savior's breast? We love you, oh, but Jesus loves you best. And we bid you good night, good night, good night. And we bid you good night, good night, good night. And we bid you good night, good night, good night. Jerusalem, just like and we bid you good night, good night. Good walking in the valley of the shadow, and we bid you good night, good night. His rod and staff shall come, and we bid you good night, good night. Well, now I know right well, and I know right, and we bid you good night, good night. God Dan's in heaven and he's ringing his bell. We bid you good night, good night. And he wants us to know that all and we bid you good night, good night. God Dan's in heaven and he's ringing his bell. Good night, good night. And he wants us to know that all and we bid you good night, good night. Oh, lay down, my dear brother, lay down and take your rest. Won't you lay your head upon your Savior's breast? We love you, oh, but Jesus loves you best. And we bid you good night, good night, good night. And we bid you good night, good night, good night. And we bid you good night, good night, good night.
So that's the end of the service. However, there's a lot more booze. We have the room until 5. So we encourage you, if you can, to stay, to share stories about Dan. Keep your glass full, because Dan would want it that way. Thank you all.